Employment-related social movements for transgender rights in India have played a crucial role in challenging discrimination and advocating for workplace inclusion. From legal victories to corporate initiative, these movements aim to create equal opportunities and economic empowerment for the transgender community. In this presentation, we will explore the origin, milestone, challenges, impact, policies ensuring fair employment rights for transgender individuals in India. For centuries, hijras held an important place in Indian society. They were respected as religious practitioners, entertainers, and guardians of the royal harems. Ancient texts like the Vedas and Puranas acknowledged gender fluidity, recognizing hijras as a third gender. But this acceptance was shattered under the British rule. The British introduced rigid gender binaries, erasing India's traditional recognition of hijras and other gender diverse identities. In 1871, the Criminal Tribes Act labeled hijras as a criminal tribe, classifying them as inherently unlawful. This law led to police surveillance and arrest, restrictions on movements, and the forcible removal of children from hijra households. Colonial morality dictated that only two genders existed, and anyone outside that binary was seen as unnatural or even dangerous. India regained independence in 1947, and the Criminal Tribes Act was repealed in 1952, but the damage was already done. The stigma persisted. Hijras remained social outcasts, denied education, jobs, and basic rights. Many were forced into sex work and begging for survival. This systemic marginalization continued unchecked for decades. By the late 20th century, hijras and transgenders individuals began organizing. In 1994, hijras gained the right to vote, one of the first legal recognitions of their identity. The rise of the LGBTQ+ movements and human rights activism in the 1990s and early 2000s encouraged hijra activists to demand legal recognition, protection from violence, and social inclusion. NGOs and grassroots activists started pushing for education, employment opportunities, and legal identities for hijras and transgender people. These struggles laid the foundation for the transgender rights movements in India, as people fought to reclaim an identity that colonial rule had erased.
In India, when people advocate for better employment for trans individuals, it is involved with other concerns they have. In these three forms of activism, very little has been made that specifically advocates for trans work rights. It is most common to see people advocate for general trans rights and mention employment as one of their big complaints. When it comes to literature, most times authors will make pieces that involve trans characters or tell stories of trans individuals. Poems, novels, books that involve more illustrations, and memoirs have been made to advocate. It is likely that some of these books touch on the subject of the difficulties to acquire a job as a trans individual. When it comes to art, most artists release pieces that in general advocate for trans individuals. Many of these people make pieces that show what it means to be trans and the struggles they go through. One notable example is Kalki Subramaniam. Alongside these individual artists, there are many organizations that help bring about more art by trans artists. Kalki Subramaniam went on to make her own organization called the Aravani Art Project that provides trans individuals with a job to paint murals in India. Digital activism is the most popular form of the three. Many go online to express their opinions and provide information for others. People provide information on what people are doing to bring about change and what policies have been implemented that will affect them. In general, netizens have agreed that while changes have been made, there's still a lot that needs to be changed. There are also many organizations with an online presence that provide help to trans individuals for them to get a job. Most of them will provide classes, training, connections, and general resources that could help a trans individual acquire a job.
Moving on to policy, there are a few policies considering transgender people, more so transgender employment within India. However, they are not the most effective as there are ways for employers to work around such policies in order to exclude and ostracize transgender individuals. The first act would be NALSA versus India, a landmark court case that established an official third gender that the government must recognize. Moving forward, there was the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act in 2019, which had some benefit for employment as well as downsides. It banned discrimination in the workplace and made employers hire a complaint officer to make sure no discrimination was taking place. However, the business could hire anyone as a complaint officer, so it is likely that they would be biased towards the business and underreport complaints that may arise. Further ahead, in 2024, there was the Equal Opportunities Policy for Transgender People, which expanded on the Act in 2019 and added more to what it covered. Specifically, it made certain amenities necessary for transgender employees within the workplace and made someone's transgender identity more confidential. Additionally, it made a grievance redressal mechanism, which again would make a complaint officer a position, and the officer would report to the committee of the academy in order to report discrimination within the workplace. The committee would then implement their own investigation and attempt to amend the complaints. However, it faces the same faults as before with the complaint officer, who is likely partial to the business and would not report issues that transgender employees may have. So, while these policies may seem good on paper, in practice they do not achieve much for transgender employees in the workplace throughout India.
Transgender inclusion in India's workforce. Transgender inclusion in India's workforce isn't just about equality. It's vital for economic progress. A diverse workforce boosts innovation and productivity. And companies like Tata Steel and KPMG are leading the way with inclusive hiring policies. A shining example is Sushant Divgikar, a model, actor, and advocate breaking barriers for the transgender and non-binary community. Their success proves that talent transcends gender, reinforcing the need for equal workplace opportunities. With 92% of transgender individuals lacking formal employment, initiatives like Kerala's job programs are crucial in reducing poverty and empowering lives. Inclusive businesses not only uplift communities but also enhance corporate reputation and attract top talent. It's time for businesses and policymakers to take action. Transgender inclusion isn't just right, it's a key to stronger and more prosperous India.
In India, a lot of transgenders face similar challenges when entering the workforce. Most transgender people in India work in the informal spheres of sex work and street begging, but some may find low-salary jobs at the LGBTQ, non-governmental organizations, or service places. A bunch of stereotypes held by the employers cause discrimination across the workforce against transgender people in the formal sphere. Some economic consequences that transgender people may have to face are that many jobs that they do find often have lower wages compared to others, and their colleagues and employers will treat them with disrespect. Transmedicalism is a type of thing that was formed from a bill to try and help the LGBTQ community, but however, it was the opposite. One must medically transition, in other words, they have to go through gender reassignment surgery to be a valid member of the transgender community. Without being technically going through the surgery, they would be unable to classify themselves as transgender, causing other people to not understand where they're coming from and more bias and harassment and discrimination in hiring.
When facing the challenges of transgender employment, India has come up with quite a few responses to aid trans people in the workforce. For starters, India has increased efforts for the inclusion of transgender people in and out of the workforce over the past years. As stated in a previous slide, India has implemented multiple policies, such as the Transgender Persons Act or the Equal Opportunities Policy that was aimed to reduce workplace discrimination against trans people. Aside from that, India has been growing to become developed. It is already a very conservative-minded country, but as infrastructure develops and education rises, it is possible that the youth can become more accepting of their gender. The strides in policy making tells us that India is on their way to becoming more accepting of this. One of the many challenges transgender people can face is employment opportunity. Thankfully, NGOs or non-government organizations have been aiding in the fair treatment and employment of transgender individuals. As said by many transgender employees, workplace violence is very much present, and non-government organizations are relatively better at controlling this. It's hard to find employment outside of NGOs, or even to see stable jobs with any actual growth. For people of the third gender, non-government organizations are a better place to be than earning wages off of illegal methods. Non-government associations such as Walmart or IBM have been increasing their transgender representation within their workforce in India. Not only that, these organizations were also awarded upon introducing transgender-friendly policies within their businesses. Not only can transgender people in the workforce strive for a better society, but it has better projected economic growth of the company. IBM and Walmart are already very established worldwide, which can mean other businesses may follow behind the footsteps of these companies and becoming more accepting of trans people. Unfortunately, it's hard to control how people react or respond to the introduction of transgender people to the workforce. Social stigmas, stereotypes, and other forms of discrimination are still present. Companies may be able to employ trans people, but discrimination within the workplace will continue to be an issue until they are fully accepted. On the surface level, India may be becoming more accepting, but the employment process is still harsh. Employers can be seen as insincere or superficial, as if they're trying to meet some quota when responding to transgender workers. What needs to change is the mindset of the workplace in order to integrate transgender people into the workforce.
One intercultural insight we learn from the Indian transgender movement is that it teaches us about the importance of listening to marginalized voices about their needs. The response to the Transgender Persons Bill in 2019 demonstrates that social change is only positive if it is addressing the needs of the people. Social change can be ineffective or harmful if it is not aligned with the needs of the affected group. This reminds me of one of the first videos we watched in our exchange about the community coalition in South LA, where the people of South LA recognized that liquor stores were the issue in their community, and they focused their activism on getting rid of the liquor stores. Additionally, the trans movement in India also demonstrates the importance of specific and tangible goals for social movement. Goals of employment and education quotas, gender recognition without proof of sexual reassignment, and explicit penalties for employers who discriminate against trans people are all tangible goals for the movement. Additionally, the transgender movement in India is an example of how social media can be used in social movements today.